Hi, I'm Courtney Normand, and I am glad to be with you today. I'm the Washington State Director at Planned Parenthood both Northwest and Hawaii, and I'm excited to be talking today with Leah Griffin and Ridi Mukapade, both from Sexual Violence Law Center, and they're an amazing organization here in Washington. We're so excited to be lifting you up today. And I know that we first got to be connected when we were working on Referendum 90 together. Folks may recall from our campaign last year that this topic came up of sex education in our schools. And I know a lot of times folks think about sex education and they're thinking about, birth control and pregnancy and human development, but we also had a really crucial message in there, which is that we have to do more for young people when it comes to preventing sexual violence. And we want to talk about bodily autonomy, and we want to talk about consent and what bystanders can do. So that's when our organizations were able to partner really, really well for the first time, I think, on this important topic, because it was one that brought us together in such a huge way. So welcome, Leah and Ridi. I really am so excited to be talking with you today. So how's your day going today?
It's good. I always love talking about this program. So
I also love talking about this program, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing with you today.
And we're so glad to be able to spotlight you this week after this whole week of action. So why don't we get started? So tell us about your organization and how was the Sexual Violence Law Center formed?
So the Sexual Violence Law Center was first established around 2008. We're now a women of color led legal aid firm, and most of us identify as survivors. The program came out of the recognition of understanding basically how devastating sexual assault is and how it can affect so many aspects of a survivor's life, and the legal needs that come out of that are often unaddressed and can be very crippling. And so it was founded to address this gap in legal services for survivors who experience sexual violence but don't qualify for domestic violence because maybe they were sexually assaulted by a neighbor, or they're being stalked by a classmate, or they're being harassed by a colleague in the workplace. And in these cases, these survivors don't qualify for domestic violence services. And so Sexual Violence Law Center is really focused on addressing these specific needs that a very unique population doesn't have access to services otherwise.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you're there and helping folks navigate this system. So can you tell us more about your mission and how you're working to achieve it?
Sure. The mission at the Sexual Violence Law Center has been to protect the privacy, safety, civil rights of survivors of sexual violence. And our goal is to really provide holistic, trauma-informed, survivor-centered legal advocacy, assistance, and representation. And we base our advocacy in race and gender equity principles. The goal is to turn no survivor away, to be able to at least provide some legal information, legal resources. And the way we do that, there's 3 tiers of services. So there's our legal line, which is a hotline that's staffed by our attorneys. And this is a number that any survivor can contact if they have questions about their legal rights, legal options. Maybe they have court coming up and they don't know what to expect and they want to be able to talk it through with an attorney. A second tier of service, the second level of service we provide is brief consultations. This is where maybe the survivor does have more resources overall. They feel like they could navigate the legal system, but they maybe just need a little bit of support. So maybe reviewing documents or helping them draft documents, helping them put evidence together, and preparing them for court without appearing in court. And then the third level of service is full representation. And this is where we're actually appearing on behalf of the survivor in court. And when we're, regardless of the level of service, our goal is to be holistic. So recognizing that survivors are experiencing multiple legal issues, we will advise, address, or represent in all the legal issues that are presenting. So that can be immigration related to the sexual assault, needing a protection order, maybe housing is an issue, employment, education, Title IX, privacy issues. This is a big need for a lot of survivors, being able to reclaim their privacy, and the criminal process, ensuring that their victim rights are being protected through the criminal process.
Wonderful. And I think it really kind of resonates for me because with Planned Parenthood, we look at our work through multiple lenses and different ways of trying to help support our mission, right? We have our healthcare services, we have education, and then we have advocacy. And it sounds like kind of similarly, the Sexual Violence Law Center, you're recognizing there are so many ways that people's lives are affected when they're experiencing different kinds of violence, and it doesn't just begin and end in a courtroom. There's so many systems and challenges to navigate. So it's really fantastic to hear that you're taking such a holistic approach to all of this.
Thank you. No, our attorneys, we can be representing a survivor on a protection order in court today, and then we could be in a meeting with them with CPS tomorrow to talk about how CPS might be targeting the survivor for taking protective steps on behalf of their child. And then the next day we might be like at a university going through the student conduct process with them, or the Title IX hearing with them. And exactly what you said, the idea is to really support survivors holistically as much as we can, and ensure that they're being treated with dignity through that process, that their voices are being respected and actually heard. Often the system can be really paternalistic, and in the end, we want to hold offenders and systems accountable to how they treat survivors.
Wonderful. And then you also are engaged in legislative advocacy too, right? Could you share a bit about what you're working on in Olympia this legislative session?
I'm going to let actually, before we talk about the current legislation we're working on, I'm going to let Leah talk about R90, which was something that we were really excited to participate in with Planned Parenthood.
Great.
Yeah, R90 was wonderful to work on. It was so great to see family planning organizations paired with sexual violence prevention organizations, and also the public having such a positive reaction to consent education and to sexual health education. So that was a huge win. You know, we talk about helping survivors in the legal process, and with civil protection orders, but ideally we would be able to prevent sexual violence from occurring in the first place. And R90 was a huge win for all of Washington, especially for sexual assault survivors. This session are working on a couple of bills. I'll talk about one and let Reedy talk about the other one. We're working on House Bill 1109, which is one of the bills out of the Sexual Assault Forensic Examination Working Group, on which I serve as a member. And this bill is a tremendous win for this session. It passed out of the House unanimously earlier in the month, and I'm really hoping the same for the Senate. It really strengthens civil rights for survivors. It includes a right to timely information about the legal status of their case. It also includes the right to an interpreter, which is a huge gap that needs to be filled. It also continues a case review process that allows for a task force to oversee and look into different police offices and see how they're investigating sexual assault, and if they're connecting survivors with advocates like Reedy and the Sexual Violence Law Center. So this is a great bill sponsored by bipartisan Representatives Tina Orwell and Gina Moss-Brucker in the House that we're looking forward to.
That's fantastic.
So we're definitely excited about House Bill 1109 and how it improves and strengthens victim rights for survivors. We're also really excited about House Bill 1320, which is sponsored by Representative Goodman and Senator Dhingra. And this is looking to align and modernize the 6 civil protection order statutes in Washington. Currently, there are different statutes that a survivor has to figure out how to understand, find, navigate to determine what kind of protection order is the most appropriate protection order for them. County to county, the practices are also very different in how you go about filing a petition to get a protection order. And one thing that the pandemic has allowed us to do is engage in these temporary fixes where now a survivor can file electronically in some counties for a protection order, or a respondent can be served electronically and the hearing doesn't have to be continued multiple times. Survivors can currently appear remotely, and we know that the technology exists, so that a survivor doesn't have to maybe miss half a day of work or try to arrange for childcare just to appear for a protection order. So House Bill 1320 really looks to make a lot of these temporary solutions permanent, and that's what we mean by modernizing. We're also excited because it's also including PREA, so Prison Rape Elimination Act considerations into the statute. We're trying to align more with VAWA. So there's a lot of improvements also with this legislation that we're really excited about. 1109 looks at reforming the criminal system and how survivors have to navigate that. And 1320 looks at the civil process and how to make it easier for survivors. So these are the 2 legislation we're most involved in and very excited about. And there's a lot of other great legislation that's currently happening. Though we're not involved directly, we're also excited at the federal level to see the Title IX regulations that were established under DeVos being reevaluated, and what's currently happening, the reauthorization of VAWA.
This week, right?
Yeah.
There's always so much to keep track of, and it's really, really important to have advocacy organizations like yours that are keeping a finger on the pulse and making sure to weigh in and always being informed from the survivors themselves and what their needs are and what their experiences have been. So we're so grateful to you. So at the Sexual Violence Law Center, as you're working together, I know we're in this virtual world right now, but I'm wondering, what's one thing that you love about the people that you work with? What do you like about working at the Sexual Violence Law Center?
So when talking about working at the Sexual Violence Law Center, I have to talk both about my team and our clients. Like, I can't separate them. And so I'll talk about our clients first. What I love about the survivors we serve, I guess more than love, I should say, I'm inspired by their concern for others. So none of our clients come forward for attention or publicity. In fact, speaking out can often be more dangerous and put a target on their backs by being public when they do speak about a sexual assault. But they come to us and seek legal assistance to make sure that their rapist, their abuser, their stalker, their harasser is held accountable and can't hurt others. Because we know often in these types of cases, there isn't just one victim. I think it also shows just how strong survivors, our client community is, because they're often coming forward and engaging in a system that consistently fails them, that historically has failed them. and that doesn't stop them. And I should say that no one should have to be celebrated, should have to experience a trauma to have their strength celebrated. So I think it speaks to just how amazing our clients are. Regarding the staff, the SVLC attorneys, my colleagues, are some of the most amazing advocates and social justice warriors I know, along with our clients. The way you challenge a system and hold it accountable is by questioning and being creative. And that is what my coworkers do day in and day out. And I'm looking forward to being back in the office, so that we can really support each other from strategizing on cases to mourning the losses that our clients experience to celebrating their victories.
That is wonderful. It sounds like a wonderful organization, and that it's truly, truly rewarding work. We're proud of you and appreciate you doing this work. When people give to the Sexual Violence Law Center, what will they be helping to support?
I would love to answer that question. I started out my journey with SVLC as a client. After my assault in 2014, I struggled to get a restraining order, a sexual assault protection order, through the civil courts. The respondent in my case hired an expensive attorney, and they really tried to wear me down in court by asking for continuance after continuance. And I was lost. In the midst of trauma, it's really difficult to navigate the court system. It's difficult in any situation, but especially with PTSD. So I reached out to SVLC really in desperation, and really stayed with me for years as we battled in the courts in order to get a sexual assault protection order that was eventually granted more than 2 years after my assault. And that protection really made it possible for me to recover. And being now a board member for SVLC, I know the good work that this organization does because I lived it. I recovered, I felt safe, I got my voice, because Reedy and the Sexual Violence Law Center were there to stand by my side and help me through that difficult time. So I'm eternally grateful for their work, and so grateful to be able to share my story and urge Planned Parenthood supporters to also support the Sexual Violence Law Center, knowing that they do incredible work for survivors.
Thank you, Leah. Reedy, thank you so much for all of your incredible work. It's heroic, it's so needed, and we're really, really proud to be able to support you. We encourage all of our supporters at Planned Parenthood to become new fans and supporters of the Sexual Violence Law Center. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Courtney.